I advise incoming international students for summer programs.
So we're very happy that you're able to join us this evening. We will be talking about summer programs in the United States in general, but also obviously we could talk about George Washington University. But we're really here to talk about your options during the summer throughout the United States. So I think we're ready to get started, and hopefully you can see this. If you have any problems, definitely just wave at me, and I'll make sure that I'll slow down for a second. So, what are the benefits to summer? Summer in the U.S. is a great time to really explore a U.S. college experience. You're going to live and eat on campus. You can socialize with American and other international students. Generally speaking, most campuses during the fall and summer have a lot more students on campus. But during the summer, you're going to find that there's a lot fewer students because a lot of students will go off and do internships or will go home for the summer and work. So you'll have a much smaller group, a much more intimate setting. So like at George Washington University, we usually have 25,000 students during the fall and spring. And during the summer, we drop to about 5,000 or 6,000. So you'll actually have much smaller class sizes and better access to your faculty. You'll receive more feedback. Your coursework can be more adapted to fit the class, the actual structure of the class, as opposed to a much larger lecture. So you're going to have much more intimate experiences. You can connect with your instructors and peers on a much more personal level that way. You really get a sense of community. There's a lot, as I said, there's a lot more intimate experiences. You can actually talk one-on-one with people. You'll get to know people in your classes much better. There are also experiential programs. You can get firsthand experiences outside of a traditional academic setting, such as field trips, or you'll have guest speakers or community collaborations. It'll be much more, because there's such fewer time that you're there, because usually summer sessions, and Andrea will talk about that later, much more later, that there are only a couple weeks that you're doing as opposed to a full semester. So you're going to have much more time to experience life outside of the classroom and see how the community actually connects to what you're learning inside the classroom. We'll talk more about that a little bit too. It's going to be much more focused study. You'll have a complete semester's worth of foreign language, science, or math in just a few weeks. Here at George Washington University, one of our summer sessions is only 6 weeks. So you'll have a lot that you'll pack into just that period of time. Some other schools have 5 weeks, some have up to 7 weeks, but for the most part it's somewhere between 5 and 6 weeks. Also, you'll find that there's a lot more creative programs. There are workshops, there are different ways to express yourself in activities. Just some examples of different universities. Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, they have part of Baltimore's Creative Alliance. They have music rehearsals, poetry readings, film screenings, and exhibitions throughout the summer. In Washington, D.C., there's always something active going on. It's a very vibrant summer experience, and Andrea will talk much more about that as well. West Virginia University has a summer dance academy. Yale University has a summer films institute. Northwestern in Chicago has writing workshops, and so on. So things like that, you'll have a lot of different experiences that you can see during the summer. So some of you may already be familiar with the United States, but for those who are not, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the environment, the university environment within within the United States. So you're going to find you really need to start your search with the basics so you can figure out what fits you best academically and personally. You're talking about geographic location. You'll want to consider weather, although of course during the summer it's pretty warm everywhere you are in the United States. You might have a little cooler weather in North Dakota, for example, which is very far north, versus Miami, which is pretty far south. But you'll find different cultures that are specific to the regions. So there's the East Coast, which is where George Washington University is located in Washington, D.C., along with, we're a lot closer to a lot of the big cities like New York, Philadelphia, Richmond. So you'll find we're pretty close, and it's pretty easy to get between the cities on this side of the coast. You'll also find the West Coast, which is where California, Seattle, the West Coast tends to be a little bit, they are known more for their beaches and for their a little bit more relaxed atmosphere in terms of how they conduct things, whereas the East Coast tends to be much more focused on It's a much bigger cities and much more insulated in terms of focused on careers and internationalism. So you'll find that on both sides, but it's just a little bit different flavor, so to speak, on each side. The Midwest is a pretty open, that's where most of our farmland is. So you're going to find big expanses of land and not as many cities per se, not as many large metropolises, but you'll find there are several, but you'll find just a very different atmosphere, and things move differently in the Midwest than they do on the East Coast. And then the same thing for the South. The South is southern United States can be very, very hot. It can also have, there's a really good sense of tradition and some wonderful food that you're going to find there in the South. Again, we're all different places, and don't just listen to what I'm saying about it all. You'll want to explore for yourself and read a bit about what each culture has to offer itself. In terms of a campus setting, there's sort of three different places that you could look. There's a rural setting, which, as I mentioned, the Midwest tends to have more farmland, but that's not the only place where there are rural campuses. But rural campuses are located in the country, often near farms or wilderness, and sometimes near a small town. They're more self-contained, with the majority of students living on campus, and they really have even more of a sense of community because there's not a lot around surrounding them. But the campuses, if you were to go to a rural campus, if you're interested in fields like agriculture, environmental science, or anything that has to do with outdoor environment, this would be the place, this would probably be one of the more places that you would want to look at a rural institution rather than necessarily an urban or suburban. Not to say that those don't exist in those places, but you'll find that for sure there. In an urban environment like a city, like Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, etc., you'll find that there's a lot of more off-campus learning experiences. These may include opportunities to explore the work world through cooperative classes and internships. These locations tend to attract culturally diverse students. You can also find a lot of entertainment options like museums, concerts, plays. Again, Andrea will talk more about that in a little bit. But cities also offer strong public transportation options. So if you really are used to that, or you really want to take a metro, a city would be a great place to do that. And then suburban is kind of in between the two. Suburban campuses are in small cities or large towns or residential areas near those large cities. You can often combine some of the best features of both, as I said, and you have connections to towns where you're located. In terms of size, again, smaller campuses are going to be more intimate settings. Larger campuses may have more activities or groups or clubs. It's just a trade-off of what you want. Now, during the summer, as I mentioned, there's tends to be fewer students on campus regardless. So even if you choose a larger campus during the summer, you'll find actually it's a little bit smaller. It feels more like a smaller institution in that sense. And then you want to think about the type of school. Public and state schools, so that's sort of our public institutions, those tend to have larger class sizes, maybe more social activities, and their tuition does tend to be less because they cater to students around them. In terms of the opposite, though, end is private schools. Now, you're not really going to find a huge difference, but private schools tend to be more research-focused. They tend to be academically challenging and student-focused. There's a common theme woven into the entire curriculum generally, so science or political studies. It just sort of depends on where you're looking. The cost does tend to be a little bit higher generally, but the class size can be smaller, so it's a trade-off with that. And then the third type is a community college, which you won't find much of for summer school, but I just wanted to point those out as well. Community colleges are two-year institutions, and I'm sure your Education USA advisors can speak to you more about these different options, but community colleges tend to be generally lower in tuition costs. And so some people will start at community schools just to find the right fit and then move into a four-year institution, whether that's a private or a public. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about pre-college programs. So these are high school student programs. We'll talk about undergraduate and graduate level programs in just a minute. But for those of you who may be interested, if you're a high school student or your student is a high school student, there are some options for them. So this may be of interest. So you have credit versus non-credit programs. So credit programs means that you actually earn academic credit from the institution which you chose to attend. So they usually offer university credit when you successfully complete your courses. You'll receive an official transcript, and these credits for the students may transfer to other universities. Now, non-credit programs also exist at many of the campuses where there are pre-college programs. It's just a little different. They tend to be more experiential in nature. They're enrichment courses designed to enhance or complement certain areas of a student's studies or interests. So either one are options, and it's just sort of usually the non-credit courses tend to be less time, so maybe just 2 or 3 weeks, whereas the credit programs can be 3 to 6 to 8 weeks in length. Students, if they're taking the credit program, may receive letter grades or pass-fail for credit, and non-credit programs may receive certificates of completion. There are also English as a second language options for those who are interested. Some schools do have those programs as well. In terms of the types of courses or fields of studies, there's a lot of different options. Classes can be mixed with undergraduates, so you might be mixed into a class with all regular students who are already attending that university, or some programs also have exclusive for high school students. So you might be, you'll still earn credit, but you're just with high school students and no undergraduates. They tend to be general education courses or specialized programs. Either one is an option. I'll just give you some examples. At George Washington, we have programs on crime and justice, foreign policy. We have summer arts initiatives, as well as just a whole host of different things in biomedical engineering. So same thing at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. They're very well known for their medicine, so you can explore the medical field by taking on a program at Discover Hopkins. Stanford University out in California has summer intensive studies in water and the environment. The University of Pennsylvania has Art in the City Academy. So you can see there's a bunch of different options. And also at Syracuse University, they have a TOEFL prep institute. So you can come to the US and have an immersive experience, but still actually get to practice for your TOEFL exam. You'll also live on campus in terms of how you'll experience. So really, we want to integrate you into the US university experience. You'll live in a dormitory or a residence hall, and you'll have a meal plan, so you'll get to eat at certain times and with regular with students, just sort of really experience what a U.S. campus life is like. Of course, safety and security is our main priority. Often you'll have to do sign in and sign out when you want to go out. There are curfews, of course, and you'll also be monitored, and Andrea will talk a little bit about this more later, but there will be resident advisors who are there, who are basically, they're very experienced students who will actually be there to help guide you and mentor you while you're there, as well as check for your safety and security. You're going to find a lot of international and domestic students, so you get both. Our pre-college programs across the U.S. really cater to a lot of international students, but the majority of students who attend are actually U.S. students. So it's a great way to live and study with peers from all over the country and around the world and learn about different cultures. In terms of the admissions process for the pre-college programs, and we'll talk about the admissions process for undergrad and graduate, so those are a little separate. Again, there are different requirements generally for credit and non-credit with the pre-college programs. Andrea will talk about a timeline of when all these things will be due, but it's pretty basic in terms of what there's usually a pretty simple online application, and some places will require you to write an essay as well. There are some programs that are early start programs. So let's say you're a high school student, you already signed up and you already were admitted to a U.S. institution to start your undergraduate degree full time. So some universities, not all of them, but some do offer admitted incoming freshmen the chance to take a course in the summer and get acclimated to campus early. So Syracuse and Penn State are two that I know that do that. What are the benefits to this high school program? So it's a great chance to test out college life and live away from home and experience independence and the responsibilities of a university experience. You'll leave better prepared for a university, and you can take classes by university faculty and meet admissions professionals, and you can also earn credit, as I mentioned, as well. So now in terms of undergraduate and graduate study, this is a little bit different, but some of the same features you'll find in both. You'll be in class again with American and international peers. So most universities recruit from around the world, so you'll find a wide variety of students that are enrolled in summer programs. You'll also find some other international students who are already studying in the United States. So maybe they're already taking a 4-year degree or they're at their graduate level and they're studying for their exam already. So they'll actually be here, and you'll get to actually interact with them and talk with them about what the options that you have to offer at the U.S. institution. Visiting international students take general courses, so you're integrated with American students enrolled at a university. So for example, at George Washington University, we have a 6-week program. We have 2 6-week programs. If you come into one of them, you'll just get to take any one of our 650 courses that you're interested in and actually be already integrated with students who have already attended GW and are signing up for those classes as well. Our programs also during the summer tend to be more experiential. Across the U.S., you can engage the community as part of the class experience, as I mentioned before, that there are guest lectures, site visit, and generally speaking, you focus on real-life project-based assignments. You'll really see much more, because there's such fewer weeks to actually integrate everything you're doing into, you'll find that faculty members tend to be much more focused on how it applies to real life and doing something that's much more project-based rather than a long essay or test. And of course, you'll have those, but you'll find more of that instead. Summer institutes, I just wanted to point out what these are. These can be, you might see these when you're searching around at different schools, and you might, just to give you an idea of what they are, they tend to be workshops or a series of on-campus week-long courses or something sort of in between that. They tend to be for diverse audiences, so for teachers, students, or professionals, and they tend to be more on specialized topics, programs, and sometimes for their audiences. Just an example, at GW we offer a bunch of institutes. Ours tend to be 1 to 2 months in length. They're credit-bearing. We have anything from museum exhibition design to special education to Japanese language and culture. Syracuse University offers leadership and technology and conflict management. These are short courses or workshops. McGill University in Canada offers classical studies, so they'll focus on intensive language, history, and cultural site visits. So it really just sort of depends a little bit on each institution, but I encourage you to look at those to see if you as an international student might be eligible to take some of those, because again, timing and the interest may depend on each campus. And just something briefly I'll point out are custom programs. So for this is when a university will customize a program tailored just for a group of international students. So maybe there's a cohort, maybe your class, your entire class wants to actually come to the US and do a program for 2 to 3 weeks on a specialized topic. Well, universities in the US will be very happy to tailor programs for a group of people. So these can be for credit or not credit, and they also have English as a second language is also an option. In terms of admissions and visa requirements, so it's much easier to actually apply for a summer program than it is for a 4-year degree-seeking program. The requirements during the summer across the board are much, much less than they are for a full degree, because you're only really taking 1 to 2 classes, which is very different than trying to complete an entire degree. So the application requirements are really just that you have basic course registration in most places. You'll have to probably fill out a simple application. The most important thing also is that usually you have to get a visa. So generally you'll come on an F1 visa, unless you're coming for non-credit, and that might be separate. And the host school, so we would offer the I-20 form, which is a form that gets you to your F1 visa interview. You'll need health insurance for sure. That is required by all institutions because that is a U.S. government requirement, and I'm sure your Education USA officers can also speak much more about that too. There usually are English or TOEFL requirements. TOEFL or IELTS are usually accepted. In some cases, if you've studied in English from a young age, you also can probably provide that as a waiver, basically, for your TOEFL requirements. And then again, some may request a short essay depending upon the program. So before I hand it off to Andrea, I just want to also briefly talk about financing your summer. Unfortunately, summer is not as financial aid in the U.S. does not usually work for the summer experience. There are limited financial aid opportunities from institutions. There are some scholarships, so there are opportunities. I would definitely look and seek them out because each institution, especially at the pre-college level, do offer scholarships. But one thing I would encourage you to do is look for foundation and government funding. A lot of the programs that come through our university do have foundation or government funding backing to them. So there are scholarships that are offered for short-term study. So definitely ask Education USA about that, as well as your other contacts you may have. And do keep in mind, again, that costs vary by the university. It depends on the location where you are and the length of study of your program. So if you're going for 2 weeks, it'll definitely be very different than a 6-week or 10-week program. So do keep that in mind as well. Okay, I'm now going to pass this off to Andrea. She'll talk much more about the experiences beyond the classroom, so all of the fun activities and the student support services that you will have.
Great. All right. So I get to talk about all of the fun stuff. So support services and some of the exciting things you'll do when you're not in class. So when you're on a U.S. campus, even though it's the summer and as Claire mentioned, there will be less students on campus, you can definitely count on having services available to you. Campus is not shut down over the summer by any means. So our libraries, which have extensive research collections, often they're part of consortiums with other universities. So no matter where you're studying, you should be able to get research materials and be able to complete any writing assignments that you might have. They have career centers, and depending on the program that you're involved in, the program may partner with those centers to do CV or resume workshops or maybe interview workshops. There will be fitness centers on most campuses, so if you're into fitness and you want to make sure that you stay in shape over the summer, those are definitely good places to visit. Sometimes they'll have pool facilities, and when it's hot in the summer, that might be of interest. So it really depends on the campus. They'll definitely have student health services. That's going to be universal. So somewhere, if you're not feeling well, that you can go. And depending on the program, I just wanted to mention sometimes these will require medical forms, particularly for pre-college programs for high school students, because we need consent in order to help them if they're having a health issue. International Student Services is going to be another universal and incredibly important office. They're going to be your experts on immigration and visa concerns. So if you have questions about, can I work while I'm in the U.S., can I travel outside of the U.S. while I'm visiting for the summer, those are going to be the experts who can give you those answers. Course advising is obviously my favorite. That's the role that I play here at GW, but you'll find that universally if you come to study in the U.S. We can give you individual advice on what courses make sense or what programs make sense based on what you're studying, because it's really important that while you're here, you're moving ahead in your studies and you're getting the most out of it. So we're here to help you with all of that, and we're also kind of your liaisons to the university before you come on campus. So next I'll talk to you about what it is like to live on campus. So one of the things that you can pretty much guarantee you'll have if you're at a U.S. institution is a shared room. If you choose to live on campus, that's probably going to be normal. So anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe more roommates sharing a bathroom, perhaps a kitchen or common space. That's very, very common in the U.S. There are less students, like Claire mentioned, over the summer, so at some institutions you might be able to request individual accommodations. It's really going to depend on the program, so definitely something to consider. But the great thing about sharing a room with people that you've never met is it instantly creates a sense of community, and you really get that experience of being abroad and visiting somewhere. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. The other thing I should say about campus living real quick is that it's not the only option in some cases. For example, if you're in an urban setting, there may be off-campus living. If you're a graduate student, that may be of interest, but I'm going to focus here on campus living, but I just wanted to mention that. So most campus living will also have access to kitchens, and it can be anything from one kitchen in your residence hall to a kitchen on each floor to perhaps you'll even have a kitchen in your room. So if you're interested in cooking or you're not feeling like going to the dining hall, that's a really good amenity that you'll have in your residence halls. Common space is another amenity for studying, for doing group activities, for just hanging out. And then resident advisors. So Claire mentioned these. These are going to be your experts, your mentors on campus. They're going to live in the residence halls with you. They tend to be upperclassmen, so either probably junior or senior level undergraduates or maybe even graduate level students at the university. They know where to go for everything. They can answer your questions about where's the best place to buy this or how can I find the student health office. But they're not just there as a resource, although that's one of the great things that they do. They're really there to make sure you have an amazing time. So often they'll be there planning activities, doing social events, taking you to cultural sites. So I'll talk a little bit about those types of activities here in a minute. And then meal plan. So depending on where you are and which institution you choose, this may vary, but in general, U.S. institutions are going to have a dining hall where you purchase a meal plan, and then you can go 2-3 times a day, depending on what the meal plan is. pick up your food, leave, hang out. It's just kind of a general student space. That's going to vary by campus. I know here at GW, we don't have a traditional dining hall experience with a meal plan. Instead, because we are an urban campus, we have lots of places to eat on and directly off campus. And so students have a variety of options. So it really is going to depend on where you end up, but that is something to consider about dining options. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of those social experiences that your resident advisors or your program officials may be helping to plan. So it's going to run the gamut from professional opportunities, cultural opportunities, social activities, so trips off campus. So there's going to be a lot going on. There's might be sessions with professionals, so depending on where you are, there might be nearby businesses or industries that have working professionals or maybe research practitioners, field experts who can talk to you about their work, about how they got involved. Perhaps you'll visit their offices and get to see a bit of what they're working on. You'll definitely have visits to local sites, so whether they're historic or cultural. If you're in an urban place, that may be the norm. I know we're 2 blocks from the White House in Washington, D.C. If you're in a more rural setting, there may be a lot of history there, or historic sites, or maybe small town things going on. And cultural sites everywhere you go. No matter where you are in the U.S., you can definitely find a bit of the flavor and culture of that area. Networking opportunities, not only with those professionals that I mentioned, but also with your peers, because what you'll find when you come to a summer program like this is that you are side by side with people studying a variety of different subjects who are possibly already working professionals, just obtaining a degree. And so it's really a matter of creating a community and making sure that you also get a chance to meet these other international students who come from really diverse backgrounds and have a lot to share. You may have day trips to nearby places, so I'm going to particularly focus on some of the trips that I know GW, we tend to go to Philadelphia for a day trip, but no matter where you are, there's probably somewhere nearby off campus that is of interest, and so you can see more of the U.S. than just the campus you're studying on. Eating meals with American peers and other students, perhaps going to sporting events. I know that over the summer, baseball and soccer would be our 2 big sporting events. So those are definitely things that you can try to get to again, get more of that experience when you're not in the classroom. And then the next slide is going to talk about that timeline that Claire mentioned. So you guys are doing a great job. You're here in this session. It's only January, so that's fantastic. I'm going to talk through this timeline, but I don't want you to feel that you're behind if you're not in the January category already. So in September and October, that's typically when programs are deciding what they'll be offering for the coming summer. So that's a great time to start your research for the various programs that you might be interested in, but also to kind of think through those other travel pieces. So particularly making sure that your passport is up to date and that it will be valid if you choose to study abroad. Then in November and December, typically applications will go online for summer. So you can start applying and getting your materials in, and then there might even be priority deadlines or a variety of different deadlines depending on what program you're interested in, so just making sure that you're keeping track of those. January through March, so that's where we are right now, is a great time to, again, apply, submit additional documents. You'll probably be getting your decision in these months, and then making sure that you have all of your visa documents so that you can kind of move forward, make your appointment at home, and get everything taken care of for your travel. Then later in our spring, so March through April, you might finalize your tuition payments. In some cases, you'll have deposits for the program, so that's your intent to enroll. They'll ask for a deposit in advance. You might also register for classes at this point. I know this is when our students register for classes if they're coming to GW. You can continue any of those visa steps that might still be outstanding. Secure your housing. So depending on where you go, either your program may arrange housing for you, or you may find your own or work directly with the on-campus housing office. This is a great time to check your health insurance requirements, particularly if you plan on bringing your own health insurance plan and waiving the university plan. This is a really good time to make sure that your plan matches up with the requirements of the institution and that they're required to have. And then May through August. So these are typical months where we have our summer sessions. Sometimes they'll extend as late as September. Every institution is a little different, but you can pretty much guarantee that May through August is going to be the summer term for most schools. So that's when you'll be arriving for your orientation, getting on campus and checking in with the International Services Office. And that's when all of the fun really begins. So that's kind of the general timeline. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask at the end. And then in terms of looking up, how do you find these programs? Because, well, first I'll do a plug for EdUSA. Of course, please always go to your EdUSA office and ask them, tell them what you're interested in, and they'll help you get started. But if you're at home and you're thinking, how am I supposed to choose from the thousands of universities that are in the US, there's two websites that are both related to summer programs in particular. So the North American Association of Summer Sessions and the Association of University Summer Sessions, they both have websites that list their members. And what's wonderful about that is that they'll link out to those sites. So that's a really easy way to kind of narrow the field. By no means are those the only places where you can do summer study. There's thousands of opportunities for you to take advantage of, but by looking at these two sites, you can sort of narrow in perhaps on a few schools to focus on. And the ones that are in bold here on this slide are the ones that are particularly focused on international students and recruitment for the summer. So these are really good places to check out as you're doing your research. And then, of course, just going to individual school websites is always a good opportunity as well. So I think that concludes our formal part of the presentation. So I'm going to turn my camera back on, and I think we're ready for questions. So hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Regal. I'm the one who was just talking there at the end. I'm the Special Programs Advisor.
And I'm Claire Schulin. I don't know if you can see me. I'm the one who was speaking in the beginning. I'm the Director of the International Summer at GW.
So if anyone has any questions about any of the things we've talked about, please feel free to type them. I don't know if Mara's there, perhaps kind of taking your questions, but anything that you have questions about, we'd be happy to answer. Tough crowd. So if you, we also had our contact information up at the end, and you might be thinking of questions right now, but we're always happy to take questions generally. So Mara has our contact information. She's also obviously an amazing resource, being an EdUSA advisor. So she can help you year round, but we're also happy to take questions by email or phone.